So you've brought darkness into light. You started sharing your story. But at some point, you decide that you're more than just your story. How do you not only get your spark back, but create a life outside of the trauma?
Welcome to the Stop Suffering in Silence podcast with your host, Denise Walsh and Rachel Timothy.
Welcome back, you guys. My name is Denise Walsh. We have Puppy Jax, of course, interrupting, and Rachel Timothy, co-host. We're glad to be here with you today. And we are just going to have a really candid, open discussion about the healing journey, because there are several phases, I would say, right, to the healing journey. One is living in fight or flight mode. It even could be the la, 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 I'm fine, everything's fine. But yet either the trauma is currently happening or you've pushed it down and have tried to just ignore it and have never really done the healing work needed to process through it. And so that's one phase. And to be honest, some people stay there for decades. And so and any of these can take as short or as long as it does. And then the second phase would be when you bring that darkness to light, when you actually start talking about it, where you go to a counselor, you tell confide into a friend, and you start sharing your story. And part of that is to process through it. Part of it is to make sense out of something that doesn't make sense, like you're understanding your emotions, you're building back self-trust as you're like, no, I'm not the crazy one. Like, this makes sense why I felt that way, because it is wrong the whole time, right? But eventually you get to a spot where you go, but I'm more than what I've experienced. I've got a lot more to offer the world. Like, who am I fully, right? And so, Rachel, I know you brought up this topic because it's something that as you've grown on your healing journey, you've experienced a bit too. So tell us more about what this means to you.
Yeah, so the best way that I can think in the moment to explain it is when I stopped suffering in silence and started to speak out. It was almost like I put a hat on. And now I'm at a point where I feel like, or I did, where I was wearing that hat every day. And it was, the first thing brought up in discussions. It was the first thing me and my friends talked about. It was whatever, the first thing that I think of when I wake up and the last thing I think of when I go to bed. And it was just a hat that I felt like I was wearing all the time. And I have reached a point where I'm like, I want to wear other hats. I want to take that. I mean, it's not that I can't put that hat on when needed at times, but I want to wear other hats. I want to have conversations with people that are not completely centered around the trauma that I've been through. I remember one day, probably 2 years ago, I had gone to a coffee shop and somebody had told me that the owner of this coffee shop had read my book and would like to meet me. And so I happened to be going there and I stopped by to see her and had a great conversation that day. And then we ended up having coffee like 2 or 3 more times. And it wasn't until the third time did I know she had a history of extreme trauma. And it was like, I knew her as the coffee lady. I knew her as a Christian and a friend and all these other hats. And I didn't find out about the hat of trauma until much deeper into the conversation. And I remember having a conversation with Granny about it and her saying, that's what I want for you. And that's kind of where I'm starting to find myself.
Do you feel like you have times where you're wearing the mom hat or the friend hat and how do you feel during those times?
Alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel alive. I feel real. Life just has more color and it's not just that same old hat.
Yeah. So part of it is figuring out, like, getting yourself back, right? We've said you got your spark back, you got your color back, you got your redness back, right? Your competitive nature and a lot of things that you feel like you found yourself again. But yet it's more than that. It's really creating who you want to be.
It is. And I think for me, what's been difficult is I found a peace with the purpose for my pain. And so everything I did seemed to then start to revolve around finding a purpose for my pain. And that's great. And I think, God can and does use our pain for beautiful purposes that we could never imagine in our own brain. But at the same time, there's purpose outside of our pain too. And learning that we have more to us than just our trauma to offer the world.
So let's talk about that. How do we expand ourselves and, number one, relight our spark, come back to ourselves, and then we'll talk through how do we grow even from there. So what are some things that you did to relight your spark that brought you out of the fight or flight and into more of the healing journey?
Well, 90-day U-turn, first of all, but it was really those intentional conversations towards what I want and believing that it was possible and having people around me believe it was possible. And because it's scary to step outside, like take that hat off and you just wonder, is there really anything else out there? But when you believe it and the people around you believe it and you really start going after it, then that hat doesn't look so cute in your outfits anymore. Like it's not as stylish.
It doesn't match.
It doesn't match anymore. That's right. It doesn't match. So, I think 90-day U-turn and having a group who was intentional about who they wanted to become and letting go of what they didn't want to be anymore was huge.
So I hear two things. Number one, talking about what do I want? Who am I? What are my joys? What are my strengths? How do I want to fill my day? What is my dream day? What are some habits I really desire? Journaling, exercise. For you pick up your kids from school like 2 hours a day.
Longer than that,
part
actually.
of your dream, right? Because you want to be able to do that for them. And so you thinking through what it is what you want, and then figuring out how to put that into your calendar. But then you also said letting go of who you used to be, or the ways you used to think, or the ruminating that happened, or the meaning that was made during that time. Tell me a bit about the letting go piece.
Yeah, I'm sure I've done it for years, but I'm really noticing it more now. Like one of the things that I'm trying to focus my mind on letting go is receiving validation or belief from people. Like that I was a person, I still am in many ways, like I'm working on it, but that needs that validation, that needs somebody to say, I believe you, I hear you, like you're right, they lied, you didn't lie, like this is the truth. And I'm needing to let go of that because it's exhausting me, because I can't convince anybody of the truth. That's God's job. And so that's
that
when
means you need to tell them all the whole story.
and it's exhausting and nobody, and then people really don't want to hear the whole story. Plus, when I'm learning, when you over explain, it actually kind of does the opposite. And then they start to, is this real? But that's just one of those things that I'm needing to let go of. Needing to let go of ruminating on lies that were said over me and trying to figure out if are they true, are they not true? Like, just no, I'm not there anymore. That's not who I am. Truly taking ownership of my mind.
Yeah. Choosing the thoughts that you want to think next, and then letting go of the things that are not serving you anymore, right? We know that sometimes those thoughts in our past were protecting us potentially, or they were put on us. They aren't ours to begin with. But once we bring something from darkness to light, then we have that conscious choice. They're not operating on autopilot anymore. They're conscious, and we can say, all right, is this true? Who am I now? What is it? And you can go through all of those interpretive questions to claim the thought that you want next.
So I absolutely thought it was protecting me. Like if I don't have in my front of my brain at all times what bad thing could happen, then I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah. Now, I do have to say, part of what builds confidence and trust that it's okay to let that go is evidence.
Right.
Right. So the more safe you feel, and some of it is a choice, like you're choosing to feel safe, but some of it is evidence. Like I did go to the store and I'm safe, and I did go to the basketball game and I'm safe, and I did. So really stacking up that evidence, but then also seeing it as evidence.
Mm.
Because I think oftentimes if it's right here and you could be doing a lot of things that are safe, but you don't feel safe in the moment, and so it doesn't actually stack up. But if you're taking a look at it as evidence that you're safe and you're you're healthy and you're strong and all of that, then that can really start to build that dream belief stronger.
It makes me laugh because I'm reminded of when you and I would talk when we first started you counseling me, and you'd all, how's your week been? And I'd tell you all like one good thing and like 10 bad things, and you'd be like, oh, that's so wonderful that happened. That good thing happened. And man, tell me more about that. And I'm like, did you not hear the 10 bad things? Like, help me, I'm drowning. But it was interesting because even though it was frustrating at the time, I see how that started to rewire my brain.
Yes. Yes, because there were safe. We want to, acknowledge and validate that, right? But there were also seasons where you were safe. You did not feel safe, even in your own skin. And so we had to build that security in yourself too. And how do you do that? By talking about more of what you want. The more we talk about the fear, the more we talk about the hard stuff, the bigger that becomes. And that's more of what we see, right?
Exactly. And you would often say, Rachel, would you have been able to do this 2 years ago? And taking that quick look back, no, I wouldn't have been able to. That is progress.
Yeah.
So it really does affect your whole being when you set your eyes on the right thing.
So there's two skills there, you guys. Number one is to focus on what's working, because guess what? Life's happening all the time, right? There's always a shoe dropping somewhere. It's part of life. And so instead of focusing on that, identify and focus on what is working. And so that's why in my journals, I have an eyes wide open section where it's like, what is working? What is going well? Let's really hone in on that. That's why gratitude journals are really helpful, because it focuses you on what's going well in your life. But then also reminding yourself how far you've come.
Absolutely.
So another thing that we talked offline about was sometimes it's not just about getting back to like who you used to be or figuring out who God made you to be now, or it's also about figuring out who you want to be and growing some skills, because there may be skills that need to be learned, especially if you've had trauma in your childhood, and there may be social skills you need to learn, conversational skills you need to learn. There may be, you think of, I'm just thinking of like, what's the word when you're isolated, right? And you're not like, there may be social discomfort there. We've got to grow some of those skills.
Yeah.
And so there's a few things that I've thought of that help to grow skills, but have you like practiced anything or done anything to help grow you in this process?
Stepping outside my comfort zone for sure. But I think one of the things just recently, and it's been on my mind a lot, so that's going to be the first thing I think of right now, choosing who I listen to. Like there's so many naysayers out there, so many people who will discredit what the gifts God has given you, or say she's just a trafficking survivor. She's crazy. I've heard so many different things spoken over me, and not listening to those words, not even always listening to the words in my own head, but choosing to listen to God and the goals set before me.
Yeah. I found that even the Stop SIS girls getting to the retreat was a huge step outside their comfort zone.
Yes.
We had multiple girls say, "Oh, next time." We were like, "Guys, there is no next time."
Yes.
And so getting to an event or getting outside of your own circle. So a couple things to practice, right? Could even be just going to a Starbucks to read a book. like being in public, getting comfortable around people without necessarily needing to have your guard up. It could be just practicing small talk. For example, my son ordered, he really wanted this thing. You guys, I'll like link it below, I guess. It's called Charisma on Command. And you should look it up. And Charisma on Command is all about confidence building. Now, I haven't watched every single video. I've just seen the few that Owen has seen. And like building confidence and having good interpersonal relationships. I'm sure finding your like soulmate is on there, right? But Owen was watching some of these videos and he was like, oh my gosh, Mom, I want this e-course. It's called Charisma on Command. So we got it for him for Christmas. And I've only watched one lesson. There's like a whole month of lessons. Each one is 20 minutes. But the first lesson was all about like being fun and smiling, being warm. And his action step for this week to practice is when somebody says, how are you? Oftentimes we say things like, oh, I'm fine. How are you? I'm good. How are you? Well, the action step is to be better than good. When somebody says, how are you? To say, I'm awesome. How are you? I'm fantastic. It's a great day. Just to like be a bit memorable and to be, it just catches people off guard. Right. And so I thought that's a really, number one, it's a cool skill to learn at 14. Like I'm excited for him to go through this course. But I thought how many adults could benefit from skills that they may have never learned. The interpersonal, the communication, the being comfortable around people, especially if you're an introvert. And I think as we step out of the hurt and out of the healing, even into who we want to be next, it's a reminder that you may just have skills to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe part of the being more comfortable is learning some of these new skills.
Right. Well, I mean, I remember I could not get on Zoom in the beginning. It was triggering. It was, I was so nervous. I could hardly, like a panic attack the whole time. And now it's comfortable. I mean, granted, it's like 3 years in, but yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that you take a step into it despite the uncomfortability and it begins to grow on you. You begin to grow.
So you can even Google stuff like this, you guys. So if you are somebody who gets really awkward or uncomfortable, you could Google like, what are some good conversation starters? What are some good questions to ask? Like you can come prepared in a way for this kind of thing. It's really cool to think that the world's your oyster. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just about getting back to like who you used to be or it's like, you really have the ability to learn new skills and to step into who you want to be.
And it makes life more fun. I mean, if I knew that I had to wear my trauma hat for the rest of my life every single day, you're not going to want to get up.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I think the reason this whole hat analogy came is because I went to Goodwill. It still has the tag on it. But check out this hat I got.
Oh my gosh.
Is that not adorable?
So cute.
I mean, it still has, but yeah, so I took off my trauma hat and I put on a bonnet.
It's colorful.
Hey, $2.99. I think it's precious.
Aw. Yes. Yeah, you're right. And so it's like a rediscovery, but then even deeper than that, it's like being creative with yourself. Like, all right, well, now what?
And I think we get stuck in, well, this is my trauma. This is my story. I'm still having flashbacks. I still have new things that pop up. And in the past, I felt like the only way I could get through it was if I told it to somebody. Now I'm able to write it and get it out and move on. And I just think, yeah, even if you're digging in, like your brain is popping up new flashbacks and new memories, you can't live life, I feel like, sitting in talk counseling every week for the rest of your life because you're just talking repeatedly over similar things or the same things. And I don't know, I just feel like at some point you got to take action steps and quit talking.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a season for processing, and then there's a season for what's next.
Yeah.
And and that's the fun part. And that's where you can really be creative, and that's where you can try new things. Like maybe you love pickleball and you don't even know it yet.
Yeah, that's true.
You could try. Maybe you love card games and you don't even know it yet.
That's true. That's right. Maybe you love going to Goodwill and finding neat finds and you don't even know it
The
yet.
world's your oyster. Like, try it. Why not? Right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, cool. Well, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to add? I think this is a really interesting concept to think through. And if you are on your healing journey, we'd love to hear a bit about your stories, right? There's a season for like fight or flight. There's a season for processing through it. And then there's a season to go, okay, that's not all of who I am. And I want to create some new hats. And you get to.
Yeah. And don't hear what we're not, don't hear what we're not saying. Like if you're in a place where you're still needing to speak your story out, or we're not telling you to suffer in silence by any means. But just start to take some inner reflection and see, maybe it's becoming the hat that I wear every day and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think you'd say, Rachel, there was a time where it needed to be.
It did.
And that helped you process, and that helped you move through it, and that helped you find purpose and build strength. But then you didn't need it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it turned into, I needed it for the purpose for my pain. And now I don't even need that anymore.
Yeah. I think that's a cool growth step.
Yeah. That's God. Thankfully.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Comment below your aha moments. If you've got anything to add, anything that you've done to step outside the trauma and build a life outside of it, not suppressing it. But again, it doesn't have to be who you are, just a piece of who you've been. So share your story below. Be sure to like, subscribe, all the YouTube-y things, and we'll see you same time, same place next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your event, workshop, school, church, or organization, then please email racheltimothy.stopsis at gmail.com. If you are interested in donating to the Stop SIS ministry, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below. Or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence or you know somebody who is, then check out our website, stopsuffering.org, to learn more about our online programs and resources. We will always recommend that you also reach out to your local resources